For 7 years, no one knocked on my door. Not in a way that meant anything. Not with intention, not with warmth. Not like that night the storm had been building since late afternoon. The kind that presses against your windows and makes the house feel smaller than it is. By evening, the power went out without warning, and the silence that followed felt heavier than the rain itself. I was standing in the kitchen, one hand resting against the counter, listening to the hollow quiet of a life I had grown used to. 7 years. 7 years since my husband passed. 7 years of learning how to exist in half-light. I learned how to sleep in the center of the bed, so the emptiness wouldn't echo. I learned how to make 1 cup of tea instead of 2. I learned how to smile when people said, "You're so strong," as if strength was anything more than surviving. Another quiet evening alone, and through all those years, the man next door remained exactly what he had always been. A polite nod in the mornings, a soft good evening by the gate, a presence so gentle it almost blended into the background of my life. Until that night, 3 soft knocks. Not urgent, not loud, just certain when I opened the door. He stood there, holding a flashlight in one hand and a thermos in the other. Rain caught in his hair, his expression calm but thoughtful. "I thought you shouldn't sit alone in the dark," he said. Something about the way he said it made the moment linger. Not pity, not obligation. Just quiet understanding. I stepped aside without thinking. That was the beginning. We sat at the table while the storm pressed against the windows. He poured tea into 2 cups, like it was the most natural thing in the world, like he had done it 100 times before. We didn't rush to fill the silence. We shared it, and that was the first thing I noticed. Most people are uncomfortable with silence. They try to fix it, cover it, escape it, but he sat in it like it belonged there. Like he understood that not all quiet needs to be broken. "You still take less sugar?" he said casually. I looked up, surprised. How do you know that a small smile touched his face? You always make a slight expression after the first sip. When it's too sweet, I laughed, soft, unexpected. A sound I hadn't heard from myself in a long time. He didn't say anything after that. He just looked down at his cup. But there was something in his expression. Something like he had been waiting years to hear that sound again. That night should have ended when the lights came back. It didn't instead. It turned into a series of small things. A bag of fresh lemons hanging quietly on my gate the next morning. A book returned that I had forgotten lending him years ago. A pressed flower tucked carefully inside a hand, appearing just in time to catch a falling grocery bag. A presence that never demanded, never intruded, but was always there when needed. He didn't try to change my life. He simply stepped into the empty spaces it had left behind. And slowly something inside me began to shift. I started noticing him in ways I hadn't allowed myself to before. The way he listened fully, even when I was speaking about nothing important. The way he rolled his sleeves once before starting any task. The way his voice softened slightly when he said my name. I began adjusting my routines without admitting it. Watering the plants when he did. Baking more than I needed just in case. Wearing the blue shawl he once said reminded him of the sky after rain. At 58, I had believed those quiet instincts belonged to another version of me. A younger one, but I was wrong. Some feelings don't disappear. They just learn how to wait. One afternoon, I reached for something on the top shelf and felt the room tilt slightly. Before I could steady myself, his hand closed gently around my wrist. "Easy," he said softly. Not gripping, not pulling. Just enough to ground me. His thumb brushed once briefly against my pulse. And in that small moment, something changed. There are touches that happen by accident. And then there are touches that carry time inside them. He stepped back first, because he was careful. But the space between us didn't return to what it had been. Weeks passed in that quiet understanding until one evening, just before sunset when the sky turned gold in that soft, fleeting way it sometimes does. He walked over holding 2 cups of tea, sat beside me closer than usual. Not touching, but close enough that I could feel his presence. In a way I couldn't ignore anymore. "I almost moved away," he said quietly. "I turned to him when after your husband passed, I felt something tighten in my chest." "Why?" He looked down at his hands before answering. "Because hearing your grief through the walls and not being able to help it felt unbearable. I didn't realize I was holding my breath until it left me." "You heard me," he nodded. Every night, silence fell between us again. But this time it felt different. Full, I thought. "No one saw me," I said quietly. That's when he looked at me fully. "I always saw you 4 simple words. And somehow they reached deeper than anything else ever had." My hands were trembling slightly. He noticed, of course he did. He didn't rush, didn't assume. He simply turned his hand palm up and waited. And offer nothing more. I placed my hand in his fingers closed gently around mine, warm, steady, certain. "I don't know how to do this anymore," I admitted. A faint smile appeared on his face. "Neither do I." That made me laugh softly. And somehow that made it easier. The air shifted slowly, not rushed, not overwhelming, just honest. He leaned closer, giving me enough time to step away. Our foreheads met first. A quiet pause. A moment suspended somewhere between past and possibility. And then he moved just a little closer. And I stayed later. We sat side by side, my shoulder resting lightly against his. No explanations, no promises spoken out loud. Just presence, just warmth. Just the quiet understanding that something had begun, without needing to be named yet. That night, as he stood at my door to leave, he paused. "Good night," he said softly, but it didn't feel like an ending. I smiled, something lighter, something real. "See you tomorrow." And for the first time in 7 years, tomorrow didn't feel empty. It felt like something waiting. Because sometimes life doesn't return all at once. Sometimes it arrives quietly with a soft knock, a shared silence, and someone patient enough to wait until you're ready to open the door.